Welcome to the Refined Podcast with Amber Anderson, where wedding planners like you come to be encouraged and challenged through radical honesty, tough love, and brilliant ideas. As a former personal trainer turned wedding planner and now educator, Amber is known for helping wedding planners grow through her no BS yet considerate and thoughtful approach. The Refined Podcast tackles the issues you think about but fear bringing up, all with Amber's trademark sass and wit. So as you listen, be sure to hit that subscribe button, making sure you never miss that one little nugget that could change it all for you.
Hi, welcome back to another episode of the Refined Podcast. This podcast is actually geared towards wedding pros, primarily wedding planners, but we're taking a few weeks to speak to you, the ones getting married. I've asked over 8,000 wedding professionals what they most want you to know and understand about our industry, getting married, and what it takes to get down the aisle. Before we get started, you'll want to know, I don't sugarcoat things, and quite frankly, I don't have anything to lose here, right? You are not in my sales pipeline. I'm not walking on eggshells to avoid a bad review. The things that we're going to talk about in this series just are what they are. It's just, this is how it works. These are standard policies. So if you're ready, let's jump on in. Today's episode, we are going to talk about day of coordination, the cost of wedding planners, and the risk of DIY. All right. So at the top, let's talk about day of coordination. I have a firm belief, and so do many, all the leaders in our industry, that day of coordination should not exist. Okay. There was a massive movement that started in 2014 to eradicate this language from our industry. It's stuck around a little bit because of SEO concerns, and then also to just couples in general passing that among themselves and whatnot. But typically, event management is the safest base level service. Okay. Why? First and foremost, there is a day of service. There's literally no way to do that. So it's a mislabeled term, right? The semantics, the language is just inaccurate. To execute a wedding, there has to be a handoff. There has to be, a meeting, and maybe even more than one meeting. There has to be some sort of communication with the wedding pros on the team, all the vendors and whatnot. So there are at a minimum several hours that go into that. Okay. Then you have the day. And quite frankly, that's just so unsafe. I had a planner on my team get married 4 or 5 years ago, and she had worked for me for a long time, and then she went and started her own business. And when she got married, I offered day of coordination for her as a wedding gift, right? She planned the wedding. I did the work on the day. She did a flawless job planning it. Flawless, okay? I had trained her. She knows how I think. I know how she thinks. But ultimately, as she started her business, her documents were different. That was one of our contractual terms, right? So despite it being planned flawlessly, I was flipping through the documents. I had no idea where anything was. And I had the documents for a week. I'd studied them, all of that. On the day, in that moment, things are so hectic. I'll tell you, Forbes ranks event planning as one of the most stressful jobs among first responders and military and above C-suites every year. So if you can imagine what it's like on the back of an ambulance during, a code, that's what it's like on your wedding day. No one's dying, hopefully. But it's that sort of go. And if you can't read the documents, you can't read the documents. So where I'm going with that is that it's really important for someone's documents to be cohesive throughout the events that they do. That said, we want you to use our tools. Okay, so if we're using stuff that you came up with, no matter how beautiful and organized it is, maybe you're the best teacher, the best lawyer, you're just so organized, okay? And you've got these beautiful charts. It doesn't matter. If I'm looking at something different every single weekend, my brain can't compute it in the time that it needs to compute it. That's why, EMTs and trauma surgeons and all that, they memorize. Everything is memorized, okay? There's no time to reference that stuff, okay? What that means ultimately is it comes down to a reputation issue. So educators in our industry, push and encourage planners to ditch this service because it's going to hurt their reputation. Something's going to go wrong. It's not a matter of if, but when. And it's just constantly putting fires out in the background. And because our job is to keep that off your plate, for you to never know what fires we put out, You won't know. You'll just go tell your next friend, oh yeah, no, day of coordination was great. When really it was an absolute shit show. And you just don't know. So what that ends up doing is the DJ on site now sees that day of coordinator running around like a chicken with their head cut off and says, I'm never working with that planner again. It hurts relationships. It hurts reputation. So our industry educates that should not be a service. So if you see it, it's likely someone that's newer or in a rural area. That's one thing I should preface this episode with, or this series with, is that I'm speaking to metropolitan areas, okay? You're going to find smaller towns do things very differently, and that's good and okay. But I'm talking about, the Atlantas, the DFWs, the Austins, the Philadelphias, and like your bigger locations, even like Birmingham and things like that, okay? Now, I think too, realize that your wedding is one of the bigger expenses you're going to have in life, so it's best to do it right. And when you hire a day of coordination, you're not doing it right. You're kind of duct taping it together. Doesn't mean it'll fall apart, right? But that duct tape doesn't always stick. And like I said, there's a lot of troubleshooting that can happen. It's just like applying more duct tape all day long, okay? I think also when you hire an event manager, even some day of coordinators will give a list of preferred vendors. You've got to hire off that list. It does not matter if your best friend used that baker and they had a great experience. Your best friend got married once. I have used my bakers over and over and over again. Anyone can get it right once, but can they get it right over and over again? You've got to use the preferred vendors on your wedding planner's list. And if you go off that list, you need to trust their feedback. When you go to them and say, hey, I found this person, what do you think? You need to trust their feedback because they'll go to their network and say, hey, has anyone worked with this person? And they'll get, apart from reviews on Google or not, because a lot of times people that would write back that didn't have the best of experiences, when you see a bad review out there, it's 9 times out of 10, a disgruntled person and they were the problem. And I see as an educator and a coach, and I've been at weddings where I've seen the actual what's happening, and then the florist gets a bad review, and I'm like, that was 100% on the client, 100% on the client. Bad reviews a lot of times are the client was the problem. So, especially if it's long and emotional, okay? But if you were to think about those that maybe didn't have the best of experiences and then just moved on, there's a lot of bad reviews that maybe should have been written and weren't, okay? So that's why having the recommendation of an actual professional that does this on a regular basis with those people is really critical, okay? Now, I think also, let me wrap up that piece of this episode with one way of breaking it down. It creates a lot of confusion. So if you were to go get a massage, it's a 60-minute massage, and the masseuse ends up going a little bit over time, just a little bit, and you were to say, oh, you know what? My shoulder's still bothering me a little bit. Do you mind can you work on that just another minute? Okay, in your mind, that seems totally fair because we're going over time. They have shown you that they're willing to do that. They are doing it. So why not ask the question? Shoot your shot, okay? Now, the masseuse might be thinking, Curdy, I just went over my time. Why are you, don't ask for more time. It creates confusion. It creates tension because you laying on the table are like, can I ask for more? Like, I'm just asking, again, shooting my shot. I'm just going to ask a question. And then they say, no, now you're confused. Well, why did you do that? And so because day of coordination is not even corrected language, it creates confusion on what the service really is because we inherently know it's more than the day. There's no real definition of what that is. So you're asking the questions because why not? If the professional has not made it clear. And then they're getting frustrated or you're getting frustrated with the responses and now there's tension. Okay, so confusion, tension, scope creep. You're asking for things that are above what you've paid for, things like that. Okay, and plain and simple, you just don't know what you don't know. And when you're trying to plan your wedding yourself, even when you have someone coming in to execute it for the day, you don't know what you don't know. And I just really, really discourage that kind of service. Okay, let's talk about what wedding planners cost and, the risks associated with hiring wedding planners that are undercutting. And that might be, just charging way under market. And there's plenty of people out there, $500, $1,000, $1,500, whatever it is for these like massive levels of service. And That's undercutting. It's not sustainable. We'll go into all of that. But first and foremost, why do wedding planners cost what they cost? I often hear couples, one of the objections is, oh my gosh, sticker shock. They're going to be there for 8, 12, 15 hours. Like, that's $300 an hour, whatever it is. It's like, no. Event management, to do a wedding right well on the base level, it's 40 something hours. Prep work and the day together. And then there might be a few hours follow up and, offboarding and things like that. Okay. Not to mention all the time that went into building their business so that you would see them in the first place, marketing it, paying taxes, the overhead for their staff, for their software services, for uniforms, all kinds of things. Okay. So it's not that, that 8 hours on the day is what we're breaking it down to. No. So what I want you to think about is when you put in 40 hours of work at your job, what do you get? Okay. And then multiply that times, that's a week of work, right? Like the whole week of work. Now, a wedding planner is doing that over the course of however long the engagement is on a base level, right? A full service planner is putting in anywhere between 150 to 600 hours. Okay. So break that down in your job, what you would get paid for that. And then tell me that we charge too much. We have to pay for our own health insurance. My family of 4 spends $30,000 on health insurance as business owners. I don't have a business supplementing that. So no, we don't charge too much. In fact, we're barely, a lot of the professionals are barely making it by, barely. So just think of it that way. Okay. Now when we look at the, $500, $1,000 kind of event professional that's coming in way under what you see other people charging, they're likely new, and that's not bad. Okay. Because everyone has to start somewhere, right? But you need to know that. And are they communicating? Are they transparent about that? Because some are and some aren't. I would venture to say if you're going to go that route, you need to go with the one that's going to at least be transparent about it. Because what else is someone hiding if they're not? Now, I still think that it's a risk, but if it's one that you find worth taking, then just know that it's a huge investment that you're putting on the line. Okay. If I've moved people, I'm in Texas. I've moved a wedding, a tornado popped up an hour before the ceremony. We got, the meteorologists were starting to suspect a tornado would start forming, and I had to move an entire wedding in a day. Can a new planner do that? Can a new planner, handle I've had to call 911 twice in my career. I've had to handle bodily fluids. I've had to look for a missing person. I've had to move 2 weddings because of inclement weather, both tornadoes. I've had a no-show DJ. I showed up to a venue that was blocked. No one was there. And the only way I was able to solve those problems was because of my experience and because of the network that I have. I was able to make phone calls until those things worked themselves out. And I'll tell you, 2 of those stories I just mentioned were other wedding planners that helped me. I called them and said, I'm reaching out to any and every contact. I just mass texted everybody and said, what can we do here? Until it was figured out. And that's how I found a new venue for one of the tornadoes. I texted everybody I know. And a wedding planner said, hey, I know that this venue had an opening today. Call them. And that's how I got into the venue that was locked. No one at the venue was answering. And someone was actually with someone that was able to gain access to the venue and helped me out. New planners can't do things like that. Okay. I also was able to, I've called one of my DJs. Hey, I have a no-show DJ. Are you free today? Can you come out here? Showed up within an hour. Okay. Undercutting hurts the economy. It, some people care about that. Others don't. Take it or leave it. I think that, it's not sustainable. They're going to burn out because, like I said, to do it right and well, it's at least 40 hours. And then, I can't, but there's 50, 55 weekends in a year. I'm not working every single one of those. There are holidays, there are birthdays, my friends are getting married. I want to go on vacations. So let's say, the average wedding planner to maintain a level of health should not be working more than 20 or 30 weddings a year. And that depends on what balance they have. Some will do event management and full service combined, but If they're doing only full service, they're working way fewer weddings. If they're doing only event management, they're working some more. But, so that's 20 to 30 weddings or weekends a year. It times 500. Who can live on that? It's not sustainable. Now, because they're charging $500, they're booking up like bananas, and they're probably working double and triple headers on a weekend, and their body's exhausted. They likely don't have an assistant, and it is near impossible to do a wedding without an assistant. I've done that before when I was much younger, and it is possible, but it is so hard. And I always had to ask someone to help and do part of my job. I never could get it all done. I always had to be humble and say, oh my gosh, can you move these chairs? Wedding planners shouldn't be moving chairs anyway. And that was another part of the issue, right? So it's not sustainable. Now, you want to be working with someone that's not going to burn out on you. Your engagement is long. You want them to be around in 6, 12 months, 18 months. You want them to still be there and happy and excited to serve you. Again, on this piece, it's not that someone's charging for 10 hours on a wedding day. They're charging for years of experience. They're charging for taxes, healthcare, childcare, overhead with staff, software, all those things. Okay. Now then, let's round the corner to DIY. This one is love it or hate it, right? If you have an Etsy shop and are a Pinterest queen in real life, then like by all means, here's the red carpet, go for it. I will roll that red carpet out for you. I have had some clients that are that way, and what they were able to DIY at their wedding was phenomenal. Blew my mind. They worked on it all year, and every single one of them regretted it, but they did it. So it is doable. What you need to understand and know is that it turns you into a vendor of sorts, because if your product or your thing or whatever it is that you built breaks or melts or doesn't hold up or, needs some troubleshooting, who's going to do that? I can't, interrupt your ceremony and ask you to come fix something. So in addition to that, you have to bring backup supplies and all the different things that went into making it in case you have to do that on the spot to replace something. However, if you hire a vendor for that, that's their problem. They got to fix it. DIY, I think there's a common misconception that it saves money. Hands down, every single time I've let a client do it, it's cost them more money. And like I said, they've regretted it. Not only is it time consuming, it zaps the joy out of that fun craft because of how the quantity of what needs to be made and things like that. You have to store it somewhere. Where are you putting all this stuff? And you have to store it for a long time because it's not like you can just the week of your wedding make all this stuff. You've got to do it pretty far in advance. You got to put it somewhere. And let me tell you, your friends and your family do not want to do these crafts with you. I promise. They will all say yes because they love you. And maybe there's one that's kind of fun over movie night with girlfriends and whatever, fine. But by and large, you don't want to do that, okay? Especially if they're not good at those things either, right? DIY also means a lot of family help after the wedding in the cleanup process. And again, friends and family don't want to do that. They will say they're happy to because, again, they love you. But then they start drinking and they start seeing old friends and they're out there catching up with people, and now they're tired and now they're too drunk and now they're just disappeared and gone. And who's going to clean that up? Because I, as your wedding planner, am not going to do that unless you pay me to. And so then we have to deal with that at the end of the night, right? There becomes tension. I've had plenty of, people that say they would help just get outright agitated, and I've had one create an absolute fight, actually. And then I've had others that are just workhorses, and I would have coached them and hired them for myself any day of the week. But if you're going to have someone help you with some things at the end of the wedding, they have to commit to staying sober because they have to. Things get lost, they get broken, they have to. Okay? You need to remember too that this is if you want to be the belle of the ball, you have you can't set the ballroom. Okay. And that's not a very gender neutral statement, but you get my point. Okay. To be the belle of the ball, you can't set the ballroom. For the day to be relaxing and to be about you and your partner, you can't be doing all the work. You can't be worried about if all your work is going to work out. You can't. Okay. So those are the things I had in mind to share with you today. Day of coordination is a tricky thing. Making sure you hire someone at the right price point matters. And the sticker shock that couples are experiencing, I understand, I get it, but I want you to do that reverse math again on, what you're getting paid and what your weekly check in your salaried position contributes to Social Security and taxes and insurance and all that stuff. And then do the numbers on, how many hours your professional is working for you. And, maybe your employer is paying for all of your supplies and your computer and all of that. We are paying for that stuff ourselves. Okay. And then again, DIY, leave that to the pros. Okay. If you want to make a little something here or there, please make it. Make your wedding personal and special, but don't make, an item for every single one of your guests. Don't do all that. Don't make these big, huge statement pieces. Just be careful. Okay. And especially don't do things like flowers. You are not a florist. I am not a florist. There's so much that goes into, I can't tell you how many DIY cakes I've seen fall over. No matter how many times that person has done flowers and cakes, they've not done it on the scale or with the things in mind that events involve. Like that cake gets moved around all day long. That cake is in the heat. That cake, it's not like we're at the baby shower and that cake comes out of the oven, is iced and put in the corner. No, there's a lot that goes into it structurally. There's, with flowers, they have to be cold a certain way. They have to be stored a certain way to make it through an entire event. I know you can go to the grocery store and buy a bouquet and make a beautiful centerpiece and it can last for days and days. That's not how it works with weddings. They get touched and moved in a lot of different temperatures throughout, even just the setup portion of the day, and they get mad and angry and they do not look pretty. Even with the professionals, they bring lots of extra stems so they can replace stems that have gotten weary in setup. So we have lots and lots of backup plans, and we need you to know that you don't know what you don't know. All right, I hope this was helpful. Please reach out if you have any questions. You can find me on Instagram, Refined for Wedding Planners, and I'm happy to check DMs and see if I can point you in the right direction. You have a good one.